The Korean Mafia boss whispered to the black lady and said, "I know that's too big, I'll be gentle, I promised." Amara Collins had always trusted her instincts. That was the problem. Her instincts told her to take the left hallway, quiet, dimly lit, carpet plush beneath her heels. The right hallway was crowded with men in black suits and unreadable faces, the kind that screamed security without saying a word. Left felt safer. It wasn't. The door at the end of the corridor was slightly ajar, light spilling through the narrow gap. Warm. Gold. Expensive. She assumed it was a staff office, maybe a lounge. She knocked once, softly, already stepping back. And the door opened before her knuckles could fall again. Amara froze. The man standing there did not look surprised to see her. He was tall. No, towering. Not just height but presence. The kind of presence that bent the air around him, made the room behind him feel smaller, darker, more dangerous by comparison. Kang Jun-suk. She knew the name without ever having heard it spoken out loud. Some names lived in whispers, in half-finished sentences, in sudden silences when they entered a room. Black tailored suit. No tie. Shirt unbuttoned just enough to suggest confidence bordering on arrogance. His hair was dark, neatly styled, not a strand out of place. His face, sharp, controlled, devastatingly handsome in a way that felt unfair. But it was his eyes that made her chest tighten. They were calm. Too calm. Like a predator that didn't need to rush. For one impossible second, neither of them spoke. Amara became painfully aware of everything at once. Her breath too loud, her heart pounding, the faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with something darker. Leather, smoke, danger. Her voice cracked. He waited. That alone unsettled her. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I think I took a wrong." His gaze flicked over her, slow and assessing, not hungry, not crude. Strategic. Measuring. As if she were a variable he hadn't planned for. "Yes," he said calmly. "You did." His voice was low, smooth. Not loud, yet it filled the space between them effortlessly. She should have stepped back. She didn't. Her eyes betrayed her, tracing the breadth of his shoulders, the way the suit clung perfectly to his frame. He wasn't bulky, he was solid, controlled strength. Power contained rather than displayed. The words slipped out before her brain could stop them. "That's too big." The second they left her mouth, Amara wanted to disappear. Silence fell like a blade. She slapped a hand over her lips, horrified. I didn't mean, I mean the room I'm so sorry." His eyebrow lifted slightly. Just slightly. And then, to her shock, the corner of his mouth curved. Not a smile, not quite. Something darker. Amused, perhaps. Or intrigued. "You're very honest," he said. Her face burned. "I shouldn't be here," she rushed on. "I'll leave. I swear. I didn't see anything, I don't know anything, I just—" "You saw me," he interrupted gently. "That was worse." She swallowed. "Yes." He studied her for another long moment. She noticed details she shouldn't have. A faint scar near his knuckle, the expensive watch on his wrist, the relaxed way he leaned against the doorframe as though he had all the time in the world. People like him didn't. Yet he did. "You're not shaking," he observed. She realized he was right only because he'd said it. Her knees felt weak, but her hands were steady at her sides. "I think I'm too scared to," she admitted. Something shifted in his gaze. Not softness. Not yet. Interest. "Come in," he said. Her eyes widened. "No, I really—" That wasn't a request. Still, his tone wasn't harsh. He stepped back, opening the door wider, revealing a room that looked nothing like an office. It was a private suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Low lighting. Minimalist furniture. A single table set with tea already poured, steam curling lazily upward. This was not a place random guests wandered into. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Her feet moved forward anyway. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded far too final. Jun-suk walked past her, unhurried, reclaiming his space. He loosened his cufflinks, rolled up his sleeves with deliberate precision, exposing forearms corded with muscle and faint, dark ink just visible beneath his skin. "Sit," he said. She obeyed before she realized she had. Only when she lowered herself onto the sofa did the full weight of her mistake crash down on her. This man wasn't just powerful. He was dangerous. The kind of dangerous that didn't need to shout or threaten. "You know who I am," he said, pouring tea as if this were the most normal encounter in the world. It wasn't a question. Amara hesitated, then nodded. "Enough. Enough to be afraid?" "Yes." Another pause. "Good," he said calmly. "Fear keeps people honest." He handed her a cup. Their fingers brushed accidentally, and the contact sent a sharp awareness up her arm. He noticed. Of course he did. Yet he pulled away immediately. I won't hurt you, he said, meeting her eyes directly. Her breath caught. Unless, he added, you lie. The words weren't threatening. They were factual. She nodded again, unable to speak. Jun-suk leaned back in his chair, studying her like a puzzle he hadn't expected to solve tonight. Somewhere deep inside her chest, beneath the fear, beneath the shock, something dangerous stirred. Curiosity. And as his gaze lingered on her, calm and unyielding, Amara realized with a chill that walking into the wrong door might have just changed her life forever. Amara expected yelling. Or threats. Or men bursting through the door to drag her away, or worse. What she didn't expect was silence. Not the empty kind, but the heavy, deliberate kind that pressed against her chest as Kang Jun-suk sat across from her, legs crossed, fingers loosely wrapped around his teacup as if nothing about this situation was unusual. The city lights behind him framed his silhouette like a crown of fire. You're thinking about running? He said. Her head snapped up. You keep glancing at the door, he continued calmly. Every 12 seconds. Her mouth opened, then closed. There was no point denying it. I won't, she said quietly. Run. Why? The question wasn't sharp. It wasn't bait. It was genuine curiosity. She searched herself for the answer and found it unsettlingly simple. Because I don't think you'd stop me if I did. The corner of his mouth twitched. You're right, he said. I wouldn't. That should have comforted her. Instead, it unsettled her even more. Most men with power needed to prove it. They chased, cornered, demanded obedience. Jun-suk did none of those things. He sat there like a man who already owned the outcome, no matter what she chose. You're different from what they say, she murmured before she could stop herself. He raised an eyebrow. And what do they say? That you're ruthless, she replied. That you don't hesitate. That people disappear. They do, he said simply. Her stomach tightened. But not everyone, he continued. Only those who make themselves a problem. She wrapped both hands around her cup, grateful for the warmth. And what am I? He leaned forward slightly, not invading her space, but close enough that she felt his attention sharpen. A mistake, he said. Then after a pause, an interesting one. Her breath stuttered. He stood abruptly and she flinched before she could stop herself. He noticed. His expression didn't change, but his movements slowed, softened, as if intentionally reminding her he was in control of himself, not just the room. You didn't come here for me, he said, walking toward the window. You were looking for someone. My friend, she replied. She works the event downstairs. I got lost. He nodded once as if he already knew that. Amara Collins, he said. Her eyes widened. How do you? I don't invite strangers into my private space, he interrupted. If you were dangerous, you wouldn't be here. That didn't make her feel safer. It made her feel chosen. He turned back to her, studying her openly now. Not leering. Not possessive. Just focused. You're not wearing fear, he said slowly. You're wearing confusion. She swallowed. Is that worse? For you? He replied. Yes. He returned to his seat but didn't sit. Instead, he rested a hand on the table, leaning just enough that she felt his presence loom again. Tell me, he said. When you said too big, what did you mean? Her face heated instantly. I didn't mean. I know, he cut in gently. I want to hear it anyway. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure he could hear it. You, she admitted. Everything about you. This room. This situation. The way you look at me like you already know what I'll say. His gaze darkened, not with hunger but with something far more dangerous. Understanding. Yes, he said. That's accurate. She laughed nervously. You're not very reassuring. No, he agreed. But I'm honest. He straightened fully, then stepped back, deliberately increasing the space between them. You're safe here, he said. For tonight. The word tonight echoed. And after? She asked. That depends, he replied. On whether you're connected to my problems. Her pulse spiked. I'm not. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Good, he said. Because I don't chase women, Amara Collins. Her brows furrowed. You don't? No, he said. I don't need to. The statement wasn't arrogance. It was fact. If you walk out that door, he continued, I will let you go. I won't follow. I won't call. I won't interfere. Her throat tightened. And if I stay? His eyes held hers steadily. Then it means you chose this, he said quietly. And I respect choices. She realized then that the danger wasn't him forcing her into anything. The danger was how much he wasn't. Her phone buzzed in her purse, breaking the spell. She nearly jumped out of her skin. He didn't look away as she answered it. Yes, she whispered. Her friend's frantic voice spilled through the speaker. Amara, where are you? Security is asking about you, some important guest. I'm fine, Amara said quickly. I'll be down in a minute. She hung up, hands trembling slightly now. I should go, she said. Jun-suk nodded. You should. He walked her to the door but stopped short of opening it. One thing, he said. Yes. If anyone asks, he said calmly, you never saw me. She nodded immediately. Of course. He opened the door then paused. And Amara? She looked up. His voice lowered, intimate but controlled. You were right. About what? Some things, he said, eyes flicking over her one last time, are too big. She stepped into the hallway, heart racing, legs unsteady. The door closed behind her. And for the first time in years, Kang Jun-suk stood alone in his private suite, and smiled. Not because he wanted her, but because she hadn't run. Amara didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him exactly as he'd stood in the doorway, calm, immovable, watching her like the world bent slightly in his direction. Some things are too big. She told herself it meant the situation, the power, the danger. She didn't tell herself it might mean him. The next morning, reality crashed in hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. It started with her brother. Marcus hadn't called in weeks. That alone was unusual. He was reckless, impulsive, and allergic to responsibility, but he always called when he needed something. This time, her phone rang at 6:14 a.m. Amara, he said, voice hoarse tight. I need you to listen. Don't interrupt me. Her stomach dropped. I'm in trouble, he continued. Serious trouble. She sat up slowly, the room suddenly too quiet. What did you do? Pause. Then a sigh that sounded like regret mixed with fear. I borrowed money. Her chest tightened. From who? Another pause. Longer this time. She already knew the answer. From people you don't borrow from, Marcus said quietly. Her mind flashed instantly to black suits. Calm eyes. A private suite high above the city. Kang Jun-suk. How much? She asked. Marcus laughed once, broken, humorless. Too much. The word echoed cruelly. Before she could ask anything else, the line went dead. An hour later, there was a knock at her door. Not loud. Not aggressive. Polite. That frightened her more than violence ever could. When she opened it, two men stood in the hallway. Both wore black suits, identical earpieces, faces carved from the same stone as the men she'd seen the night before. Miss Collins, one said with a slight bow. Our boss would like to see you. Her heart pounded. I didn't do anything. We know, the man replied calmly. That's why you're still standing here. A sleek black car waited downstairs. She didn't resist. The ride felt shorter than it should have. The city blurred past the tinted windows, and with every passing street, her sense of normal life slipped further away. This time, she wasn't led into the hotel. She was taken somewhere else. A residence. High walls. Security gates. Silence that felt intentional. When the doors opened, Kang Jun-suk was already waiting. He stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back, gaze fixed on the city beyond the glass. He didn't turn when she entered. You should have stayed away, he said quietly. Her voice shook despite her effort to steady it. I didn't know. I swear. I know, he replied. He turned then, and the look in his eyes wasn't cold. It was tired. They always say that, he continued. And sometimes they're telling the truth. She took a cautious step forward. My brother is alive, Jun-suk interrupted. For now. Relief hit her so fast her knees nearly buckled. But, he added calmly, he made a very expensive mistake. She swallowed. I'll help him pay it back. I'll work. Oh. You can't, he said flatly. The finality in his voice crushed her hope instantly. You don't make enough, he continued. You don't know the people involved. And even if you did, time is not something we're offering. Her fists clenched at her sides. Then why am I here? Jun-suk studied her carefully, as if weighing something far heavier than money. Because, he said slowly, you walked into my room 2 nights ago. Her breath caught. You stood in front of me, he continued, and you were honest. Afraid but honest. He stepped closer, stopping a respectful distance away. That matters to me. Her pulse thundered. I don't understand, she whispered. I'm giving you an option, he said. One your brother doesn't deserve. She stiffened. I'm not sleeping with you. Silence snapped sharp between them. Then, to her shock, he laughed. What? Oh, control. If that's what you think this is, he said, you're even more wrong than your brother. Heat flooded her face. Then what do you want? He turned away again, gaze distant. I need stability, he said. Appearances. A distraction. She frowned. From what? From people who want to see me bleed. That chilled her. You'd pretend, he continued, to be with me, attend events, dinners, be visible, untouchable. Her eyes widened. A fake relationship. Yes. That's insane. So is borrowing money from my enemies, he replied calmly. She hesitated. And if I say no? He faced her fully now, his expression unreadable. Then I'll handle your brother the way I handle everyone else. The implication settled like ice in her veins. But, he added immediately, I won't force you. Her breath trembled. You said you'd be gentle, she whispered before she could stop herself. Something dark flickered in his eyes, not lust. Restraint. I will be, he said. In every way that matters. She searched his face for cruelty and found none. Only control. How long? She asked. Until my problem is resolved, he replied. Or until you choose to walk away. And the debt. Gone, he said. The moment you say yes. Her heart pounded violently now. This man wasn't offering ownership. He was offering protection with a cost. She looked down at her hands, then back up at him. If I agree, she said, voice steady despite the storm inside her, there are rules. His eyebrow lifted slightly. I expected that. No touching without permission, she said. No lies. And if I say stop? I stop, he finished. Immediately. She nodded. And Amara, he added softly, I don't make promises lightly. She exhaled shakily. Okay, she said. I'll do it. For the first time since she met him, Kang Jun-suk's composure cracked. Not into hunger. Into something far more dangerous. Relief. Then, he said quietly, welcome? She had no idea what she just stepped into. Only that the debt she never owed had bound her to a man too powerful, too controlled, and far too gentle, to be safe. Amara learned quickly that Kang Jun-suk did nothing halfway. The residence he brought her to wasn't a house. It was a fortress dressed as luxury. High walls, quiet corridors, glass and stone and soft lighting that hid how heavily guarded everything was. Men in black stood at discreet distances, never staring, never speaking unless spoken to. She was never alone. And yet, she had never felt more isolated. This will be your room, Jun-suk said, opening a door at the far end of the upper floor. It was beautiful. Neutral tones. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A bed that looked far too comfortable for someone who wasn't sure if she should sleep at all. No locks on the inside, she noted quietly. Security locks from the outside, he replied calmly. For your protection. That didn't reassure her as much as he probably intended. She turned to face him. And your room? Across the hall. Her stomach flipped. Too close. As if sensing it, he added, the walls are thick. And I don't enter without permission. She nodded slowly. You're very careful. Yes, he said. I have to be. He left her then without another word, without lingering, without crossing a single line. That night, Amara lay awake listening to the unfamiliar quiet. Not the comforting quiet of safety, but the deliberate quiet of control. Every sound felt magnified. Every thought spiraled. She was here because she chose to be. That scared her more than anything else. Morning came with rules. They were written out. Type. Placed neatly on the desk in her room. Rules for public appearances. Rules for privacy. Rules for security. No touching in public unless initiated by him. No leaving the residence without informing security. No personal questions asked in front of staff. At the bottom in clean, precise text. Rule 7. Consent is non-negotiable. She stared at that line for a long time. When she went downstairs, Jun-suk was already awake, seated at the dining table, tablet in hand, coffee untouched. He looked up when she entered. Did you sleep? He asked. A little, she replied honestly. Good. That was it. No probing. No insistence. Breakfast was quiet. Not awkward, controlled. He didn't crowd her space. Didn't watch her eat. Didn't try to impress her. That somehow made her notice him more. The way his sleeves were rolled just enough to expose his wrists. The way he listened to briefings through his earpiece while still paying attention to her presence. The way people deferred to him without question. You'll attend an event with me tonight, he said casually as if discussing the weather. Her fork paused midair. Tonight? Yes. What kind of event? A charity gala. She blinked. You're a criminal. I'm also a donor, he replied calmly. She huffed a quiet laugh before she could stop herself. His gaze flicked to her, curious, amused. You find that funny? I find it terrifying, she said. But yes, a little funny. Something shifted in his expression. Not displeasure. Approval. The fitting was worse. Designers. Stylists. Silence heavy with scrutiny. The dress they chose was elegant, not revealing, but fitted enough to make her feel exposed in a way she wasn't used to. When she stepped out of the dressing room, Jun-suk was standing near the mirror. He looked at her and stopped breathing. Just for a second. She noticed. His jaw tightened. His gaze held, dark and assessing, but restrained. Always restrained. "You're uncomfortable," he said. "Yes. We can change it." She shook her head. "No. If this is the role, I'll play it." His eyes met hers in the mirror. "You don't owe me discomfort. I owe you presence," she replied. "This is part of it." He nodded once. "Then I'll make sure no one forgets who you're with." The words should have frightened her. Instead they steadied her. At the gala, everything changed. The moment they entered, attention snapped toward them like a magnetic pull. Whispers followed. Eyes lingered. Jun-suk placed a hand at the small of her back. He paused. "May I?" he asked quietly. Her heart raced. "Yes," she whispered. His touch was light. Barely there. Yet it anchored her completely. Men stared too long. Women assessed too closely. No one approached. It was a wall. A warning. A promise. "You're doing well," he murmured as they stood near the balcony. "I feel like I'm pretending," she said. "You're not," he replied. "You're choosing." That word again. Later, when a drunk businessman laughed too close, leaned too far, Jun-suk didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply stepped forward, placing himself between them, eyes cold. The man paled instantly and stumbled away. Amara exhaled shakily. "You didn't touch him," she whispered. "I didn't need to," Jun-suk replied. "Power doesn't shout." She looked up at him then, not as a monster, not as a savior, but as a man walking a careful line between both. That night, back at the residence, the silence felt heavier. She stood in the hallway barefoot, unable to retreat into her room just yet. "Jun-suk," she called softly. He appeared almost immediately, as if he'd been waiting. "Yes. You could have taken advantage tonight," she said quietly. "Of the situation. Of me. I know. Why didn't you?" He studied her for a long moment. "Because," he said slowly, "the moment you feel trapped, I lose you." Her throat tightened. "And I don't want that," he added. The honesty in his voice was dangerous. She nodded, stepping back. "Good night." "Good night, Amara." As her door closed, she pressed her back against it, heart racing. Across the hall, Kang Jun-suk stood perfectly still, fists clenched at his sides, breathing carefully. Gentle, he reminded himself. Because if he stopped being gentle, even for a second, he wasn't sure either of them would survive it. The problem with pretending was that it required consistency. The problem with consistency was that it blurred lines. By the end of the first week, Amara could no longer tell when she was acting and when she wasn't. She woke up expecting the quiet hum of security outside her door. She drank coffee at the same table as Kang Jun-suk every morning, learned how he took it, black, untouched until he'd read the overnight reports. She learned the rhythm of his life, the careful balance between violence and restraint, control and chaos. And worst of all, she learned how it felt to belong in his orbit. "You're late," she said one morning, glancing at the empty chair across from her. He entered seconds later, jacket already on, phone in hand. "I was delayed." That was all he said. But she noticed the faint bruise at his jawline. Her chest tightened. "What happened?" He paused. Then, slowly, he met her eyes. "Public rules don't apply in private," he said. "But some truths are still better left unshared." She swallowed. "You were hurt." "Yes." "Badly?" "No." The answer was precise. Controlled. Still, anger flared in her chest, sharp and unexpected. "Someone tried to hurt you," she said quietly. "Yes." "And you're just fine with that?" His gaze softened slightly. "This life requires acceptance." She shook her head. "That's not acceptance. That's resignation." Something dangerous flickered across his face. "Be careful," he warned softly. "You're starting to care." She should have denied it. She didn't. The next event was worse. This time the whispers followed her. She noticed the looks, curious, assessing, hostile. Women who smiled too tightly. Men who watched too long, eyes calculating. And then there was him. The rival. Amara felt him before she saw him. A shift in the room. A tightening of the air. "Who is that?" she murmured, nodding subtly toward a man across the hall. Jun-suk's hand tightened briefly at her waist. "Do not look at him again," he said quietly. That alone made her glance back. The man was tall, older, his smile sharp and knowing. He lifted his glass slightly in her direction. Her skin crawled. "He knows me," she whispered. "Yes," Jun-suk replied. "And he's testing me." The rival approached. "Kang Jun-suk," he said smoothly. "You've been hiding treasures." Jun-suk didn't move. "You should walk away." The man laughed softly. Already possessive? Or just afraid she'll learn what you really are? Before Amara could react, Jun-suk stepped forward. Not aggressively. Deliberately. This conversation is over, he said. The rival's gaze slid back to Amara, lingering far too long. Careful, sweetheart. Men like him don't stop once they decide you're theirs. The moment he walked away, Jun-suk's control cracked. Not outwardly. Internally. Amara felt it in the tension of his hand, the way his breath changed. You okay? She whispered. No, he replied honestly. But we're leaving. They didn't make it home before the attack. The car slowed abruptly. Gunfire shattered the night. Amara screamed as the vehicle swerved, glass exploding, security shouting commands. Jun-suk moved instantly, his body covering hers, his arm locking her against the seat, his voice sharp and absolute. Down. Do not move. She felt him tense as bullets struck metal. Heard his breath steady even as chaos erupted around them. Then silence. The car sped forward again. Her ears rang. Her hands shook violently. Only when they were safe, deep within the residence, did Jun-suk finally let go. She collapsed against him. He froze. Then, carefully wrapped his arms around her. The contact wasn't planned. It wasn't strategic. It was instinct. Her fingers clutched his shirt, shaking. I thought I was going to die. You weren't, he said fiercely. I wouldn't let that happen. The words slipped out raw, unguarded. She looked up at him, eyes wet. You can't promise that. I just did. His hands were warm. Steady. Too steady. The realization hit her like lightning. She wasn't pretending anymore. Neither was he. She pulled back abruptly. This is crossing a line. Yes, he said hoarsely. It is. Then stop. He stepped back immediately, creating space like he'd trained himself to do. I will, he said. But understand this. What? From tonight on, he said quietly, you are no longer a distraction. Her heart pounded. Then what am I? His gaze held hers, dark and unflinching. You're a vulnerability. The word terrified her. And thrilled her. That night she couldn't sleep. Neither could he. They stood on opposite sides of the hall, doors closed, both staring into the darkness, both realizing the same terrifying truth. The lie had protected them. The truth would destroy them. Because pretending was safe. But wanting was lethal. The first mistake Amara made was thinking the attack had been a warning. The second was believing she still had time. It began with silence. Too much of it. The residence felt different the morning after the shooting. Tighter, quieter, as though the walls themselves were bracing for impact. Guards moved in pairs now. Doors locked faster. Conversation stopped the moment Jun-suk entered a room. Amara noticed everything. She noticed how he no longer let her walk behind him. How his hand hovered near her back without touching. How his eyes never stopped scanning. You're acting like I'm already gone, she said quietly over breakfast. He didn't look up from his tablet. I'm acting like you matter. That made her chest ache. I can leave, she said. I don't want to be the reason. He set the tablet down with precise calm. You are not the reason, he said. You are the leverage. Her breath caught. Someone wants to break me, he continued evenly. They've decided you're the fastest way. Fear curled cold in her stomach. Then let me go. He stood slowly, walked around the table and stopped in front of her. No, he said. That would make it easier for them. She stared up at him. You can't protect me forever. I know. Then why? Because, he interrupted quietly, I won't survive forgiving myself if I don't try. The honesty in his voice was more frightening than anger. The kidnapping attempt came 3 hours later. Amara never saw them coming. One moment she was walking through the side corridor toward the garden, guards 10 steps behind, routine unchanged. The next, a hand clamped over her mouth. The world exploded into chaos. She screamed. Fought. A needle glinted near her neck. No. The sound of gunfire cut her off. The weight vanished. The ground rushed up. She hit her knees, shaking violently as bodies fell around her. Then arms wrapped around her, strong, familiar, trembling with barely contained fury. Jun-suk. He knelt, pulling her against his chest, one hand cradling her head, the other gripping his gun so tightly his knuckles were white. Are you hurt? He demanded. She shook her head, sobbing. They tried to. I know. His voice was no longer calm. It was lethal. 3 men were alive. Barely. They were dragged into the lower level of the residence, somewhere Amara had never been allowed. Concrete. Steel. Cold. She stood at the top of the stairs, heart pounding, as Jun-suk descended slowly, jacket removed, sleeves rolled up. This was not the man she had shared breakfast with. This was the man people feared. Stay here, he said without turning. I'm not afraid, she lied. He looked back at her then. And for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something close to desperation. You should be. She stayed anyway. The screams started minutes later. Not loud. Controlled. Precise. Each one carved something hollow into her chest. When it was over, Jun-suk came back upstairs, hands washed, face unreadable. Blood stained his shirt. She stared at it. You promised you'd be gentle, she whispered. His jaw tightened. I promised you, he said quietly. Not them. She flinched, not from fear but from the truth of it. He stepped closer, stopping just short of touching her. I tried, he continued, to keep this life separate, to be someone else around you. She swallowed hard. And now, he said, voice low and dangerous, they've crossed a line that can't be erased. That night the threats came. Calls. Messages. Photos. Proof they'd been watching. Proof they weren't finished. Amara packed a bag. I'm leaving, she said, hands shaking. I won't be your weakness. He blocked the door. You are not leaving unprotected. You don't get to decide that. His voice rose then just slightly. Yes, he snapped. I do. Because if you walk out that door they will take you. And if they take you. He stopped. Closed his eyes. When he opened them they were wet. I will burn the world to get you back, he said. And I don't want you to see that. The words shattered her resolve. She dropped the bag. You don't scare me, she said softly. He laughed bitterly. Then you don't understand me. I understand enough, she replied. You're trying to protect me from yourself. Silence fell heavy between them. He reached out, stopped, then let his hand drop. I'm not gentle anymore, he said. Not where you're concerned. Her heart raced. Then don't touch me, she said. Just don't shut me out. He looked at her like she'd just handed him a weapon. You're asking for something dangerous, he warned. I already have, she whispered. The moment I stayed. He turned away abruptly. Because if he looked at her any longer, he would break. That night, Amara slept with guards outside her door. Jun-suk didn't sleep at all. He stood at the window, city lights reflecting in his eyes, making decisions that would stain his hands permanently. Because they had tried to take her. And Kang Jun-suk was no longer interested in restraint. The city learned to whisper Kang Jun-suk's name again. Not in rumors. In fear. Within 48 hours of the attempted kidnapping, alliances shifted. Clubs closed early. Meetings were cancelled. Men who once spoke too loudly suddenly remembered appointments elsewhere. War didn't need an announcement. It announced itself. Amara felt it in the house first. The air stayed tense. Phones rang non-stop. Guards rotated in doubles. No one smiled. No one relaxed. The world beyond the walls felt like it was holding its breath. And Jun-suk became distant. Not cold. Worse. Purposeful. He kissed her forehead once before leaving for a meeting that ran past midnight. He asked if she'd eaten. If she'd slept. She was afraid. He never asked if she was lonely. Because the answer would have shattered both of them. She watched him from the staircase one night as he adjusted his jacket, his expression carved from stone. You're going to get yourself killed, she said quietly. He didn't turn around. Not tonight. That's not comforting. It's honest. She descended the steps slowly. You're shutting me out. Yes, he said. Intentionally. That's not protecting me. That's punishing me. He finally turned. The look in his eyes stole her breath. If you see everything I do for you, he said, voice rough, you won't be able to stay. Her throat tightened. Try me. Silence stretched. Then, I killed a man last night, he said. The words fell heavy. Final. She didn't gasp. Didn't flinch. She just looked at him. He was part of the attempt, Jun-suk continued. I didn't interrogate him. I didn't bargain. Why are you telling me this? She asked softly. Because you asked for the truth, he replied. And because if you're going to love me. He stopped himself. Closed his eyes. If you're going to stay, he corrected, you need to understand the cost. Tears burned her eyes. And what does it cost you? Everything he didn't say. But she saw it anyway. The retaliation escalated. A warehouse burned down on the east side, empty but symbolic. A warning. A message written in smoke. Then another attempt. This one closer. They breached the outer gate before security stopped them. Gunfire echoed through the grounds. Amara was shoved into a panic room as alarms screamed around her. Inside the steel walls, she sat shaking, hands pressed to her mouth, listening to the chaos beyond. For the first time, she understood something clearly. She wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of losing him. When the door finally opened, Jun-suk stood there, Blood on his sleeve, eyes blazing, breath uneven. "You're hurt," she said immediately. "It's not mine," he replied. She reached for him. He caught her wrists before she could touch him. "Don't," he said hoarsely. "Why?" "Because if I let you," he admitted, "I won't be able to walk away." She didn't pull back. "Then don't," she whispered. His grip loosened. Slowly, carefully. He pulled her into his chest, not rough, not desperate, but firm enough to feel real. She buried her face against him, breathing him in. For one stolen moment, the war stopped. Later that night, she found the file. She wasn't snooping. It was left on the desk, unlocked, almost as if he'd wanted her to see it. Photos, names, dates, and one name that hollowed her chest. Marcus Collins. Her brother. Alive. Hidden. Protected. She confronted Jun Suk immediately. "You moved him," she said, voice shaking. "You hid him." "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because," he said quietly, "if you knew where he was, they could get to him through you." Tears spilled over. "You decided that alone?" "I decide many things alone," he replied. "That's the job." She shook her head. "You don't get to play God with people's lives." His voice cracked for the first time. "I'm trying to save them." The room fell silent. "You could have walked away," she said. "Let me go. Ended this." "I tried," he whispered. "Every day." She stepped closer. Then stopped trying. He looked at her like she just handed him both absolution and a weapon. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking," she replied. "I'm asking you to stop deciding alone." Something broke in him then. Not loudly. Quietly. Like a man laying down armor he'd worn too long. The final strike came at dawn. An ambush meant to end it. Jun Suk didn't take Amara with him. He didn't tell her goodbye. He simply pressed his forehead to hers and said, "If I don't come back." "Don't," she said fiercely. "I need you to listen," he insisted. "If I don't come back, you leave. Everything is arranged." She gripped his jacket. "You're coming back." His mouth curved faintly. "You sound very sure." "I am," she said. "Because I didn't survive all this just to lose you now." He kissed her hair. Then he walked away. The battle was brutal. But it ended. By nightfall the war was over. And Kang Jun-suk came home. Alive. Wounded. Changed. She found him in the infirmary, sitting on the edge of the bed, bloodied but breathing. Relief crashed through her so hard she nearly fell. She crossed the room and stood between his knees. "You promised," she said shakily. "I kept it," he replied. She cupped his face, finally, fully, without permission asked or denied. "This life will destroy you," she said. "Yes." "And you still choose it?" He shook his head. "I choose you. I'm just figuring out how to survive both." She pressed her forehead to his. "Then we do it together?" she whispered. For the first time since they met, Kang Jun-suk smiled without fear. The war didn't end loudly. It ended the way most real wars did. With silence, paperwork, funerals no one attended, and men who stopped answering their phones. For the first time since Amara had stepped through the wrong door, the world felt still. Too still. Jun-suk spent weeks recovering. Not just from wounds that stitched closed and bruises that faded, but from the constant readiness to destroy. Violence had been his language for so long that learning silence felt foreign, almost dangerous. Amara stayed. Every day. She learned the rhythm of recovery, the slow mornings, the careful movements, the way he stared out windows longer than necessary. She learned that strength didn't vanish when the fighting stopped. It simply had nowhere to go. "You don't have to stay," he told her one evening as she adjusted the blanket over his legs. "I know," she replied. "I mean it," he said. "There's no debt anymore. No danger pressing at your back." She looked at him for a long time. "You still think I'm here because I owe you?" He didn't answer. That was answer enough. The residence changed. Guards were reassigned. Meetings stopped happening at odd hours. Some rooms were closed forever. Others were opened for the first time, spaces that had never been lived in, only secured. One afternoon, Amara found Jun-suk in the kitchen, cooking. She stopped short, stunned. "You're going to burn the place down," she said. "I survived a war," he replied calmly. "I can manage a stove." She watched him move, careful, deliberate, almost meditative. "You've never done this before," she said. "No," he admitted. "I was never home long enough to try." The word home settled between them. Heavy. Hopeful. The truth came slowly. Not in one confession but in fragments. Jun-suk spoke of his childhood in pieces, what it cost to survive, the promises he made too young, the line he crossed so often it stopped looking like a line at all. "I don't get to be innocent," he said one night. Amara didn't argue. Instead she said, "Then be honest." He looked at her sharply. That's harder, he admitted. I know, she said softly. That's why it matters. Marcus visited once. Then, shaken, alive. He cried when he saw her. Apologized until his voice broke. Jun-suk stood in the doorway, silent, watchful, prepared to leave if asked. Amara didn't ask. Thank you, she said instead. Jun-suk inclined his head. Nothing more. After Marcus left, she found Jun-suk outside, staring into the distance. You didn't have to do all that, she said. Yes, he replied. I did. She stepped closer. You saved him for me. I saved him, he corrected, because loving you made me understand consequences differently. Her chest tightened. The proposal didn't come with grandeur. No ring hidden in food. No crowd. No spectacle. It came late one night, after laughter, after quiet, after fear had finally loosened its grip. Jun-suk stood in front of her, hands empty, expression unguarded. I don't know how to be small, he said. I don't know how to love without intensity. And I don't know how to promise you a life untouched by shadows. She waited. But, he continued, voice steady, I know how to choose you. Every day. With honesty. He paused. If that's too big. She stepped forward and rested her forehead against his chest. That's exactly the size I need, she whispered. He exhaled, a sound that felt like surrender. The wedding was quiet. No headlines. No announcements. No spectacle. Just a garden, early morning light, and a handful of people who knew what it cost for them to stand there. Jun-suk wore no armor. Amara wore no fear. When she took his hand, she felt the weight of everything he had survived, and everything he had laid down. You're still too big, she murmured as they exchanged vows. He smiled, not sharp, not guarded. Warm. And you're still brave enough to stand with me. Years later, people would argue about Kang Jun-suk. Some said he disappeared. Some said he reformed. Some said power never truly leaves a man, it only changes shape. But Amara knew the truth. Power didn't disappear. It learned restraint. Love didn't make him smaller. It made him gentle, not because he had to be but because he chose to be. And some things she learned were never too big. If you were brave enough to meet them without fear.